Tanya, thank you so much for taking the time to have us in your beautiful home today for this incredible interview. And before we get into it, I just wanted to say something very brief on something that I speak about quite often, which is authenticity. I think a lot of people tuning into this are probably expecting you to sit here and tell what's happened the past 3 years, but I made it abundantly clear when I reached out to you that I don't follow trends, I don't follow drama, and I follow the truth, and what you've built is and will continue to be remarkable. And
Thank you.
I want to keep sharing your story because what you've built is so amazing.
Thank you.
And talk about how you started this incredible company that you've built into this fabulous platform today. So I would love to start this off by getting you to explain essentially, like, how did you start this? Your whole story, you started, I think, 20 plus years ago in a studio. How did F Factor start?
You know, I sort of love the fact that my career has been one happy accident after another. And the reason that makes me smile when I share that is because often I think people are like so deliberate with their path and that they're chasing success. And that really was not, that wasn't what was on the forefront of my mind when I set out to start my career. Mm-hmm. I actually wanted to be a chef and I wanted to have a healthy gourmet shop. And that's what I thought I was going to do for a living. And I went to the University of Michigan undergraduate, and I was looking for a graduate program that would continue my learning about food. But I'm picturing taking courses on like apples and kale. And I was looking for a continuing education program, a master's program that focused on food, and I found two. One was the Culinary Institute in upstate New York, and the other one was NYU. And they had a master's program called Food and Nutrition Studies. And because my college was in a small town, I was looking forward to being back like in a larger city. And since the Culinary Institute of America was in upstate New York and NYU was in Manhattan, I said, I'm going to choose the one that's in the city. Now, I get to NYU on my first day, and I get handed a list of prerequisites. And I'm looking at this list, and the classes include anatomy, physiology, inorganic chem, organic chem, biochem. And I raise my hand, I'm like, oh, I'm here for the courses on food. I'm not pre-med. Unbeknownst to me, this nutrition degree was a clinical one. Now, 25 years later, I think people recognize that nutrition is a discipline of science. But when I was thinking about nutrition, it really was about just food. I had no idea that it was this clinical route. But my parents had paid my tuition, so I was sort of stuck. I didn't want to admit to my parents that I hadn't done the proper research to know what I was getting myself into. So I just put my head down and I applied myself in these courses. And I realized, oh my gosh, I really do like the science. Now, in order to get your degree, you have to complete a residency. And I completed mine at New York University Hospital. And your rotations include oncology, renal, cardiovascular rotations. In essence, you are an extension of the medical team. And you are applying nutrition intervention to every patient to enhance patient care, to manage a clinical condition, hopefully to reverse it, minimize symptoms. So when I graduated from NYU, the idea that I was going to focus on weight loss, frankly, felt beneath my skill set. And I'm not minimizing the importance of it, but I set out to open up a clinical private practice. I wanted to take patients with a clinical condition and improve their health status through improving their diet. And I was working with doctor referrals and working as an extension of their medical team. What ended up happening was my focus was on cardiovascular and diabetic patients. And I started to prescribe high-fiber diets to these patients because I knew from my education that fiber had a really positive impact on the health status of these clinical conditions. By prescribing fiber, these patients were seeing improvements in their cholesterol and improvements in their serum glucose levels, which is how you measure diabetic health. But across the board, something unexpected was occurring. All these patients were losing weight. And when this was reported to me, even I was a little bit dumbfounded because I hadn't set out to reduce weight loss. So when I reviewed these programs that I had created to lower cholesterol, manage blood sugars, I was wondering, what's the commonality? And then I realized that the common thread was fiber. And fiber has many clinical benefits, which was well known 25 years ago. What was not well known or well studied was fiber's weight management properties. So the fact that I was prescribing fiber to these patients, fiber's indigestible, it keeps you feeling full for hours. These patients were therefore, due to all the fiber, doing less unnecessary snacking between meals. They were feeling fuller longer after meals, so it led to weight loss without hunger, despite the fact that these patients were in an outpatient setting, going out to dinner, leading their lives. And because weight loss is so evident, I joke, if I was a chiropractor and, I adjusted your back and you walked into a party, people are gonna be like, wow, look at her back, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
But if you also lost 20 pounds, someone may say, what happened? And you said, well, I went to this dietitian to lower my cholesterol and I lost all this weight without hunger. So my phone started to ring from referrals from these clinical patients to their friends and family members and colleagues saying, hey, my cholesterol's fine or my sugars are fine. Can I get the weight loss part of what Sam did or what Jenny did? So when I think about my career, and many people have said like, wow, you really put fiber on the map. I'm like, well, you're really giving me way too much credit, because the same way that I stumbled into the path of nutrition is how I stumbled upon fiber as this basically like miracle nutrient that could help people to lose weight without hunger.
I like to ask every entrepreneur like what that feeling they had was, and when you kind of, I think, stumble upon that, what I like to call is the money idea. So would you say that when you figured out fiber, that there was this possibility you could run with it and make it a career? Was that really your money idea?
Well, I think that the idea really was I wanted to help people live healthier lives. And, what I want to say to all your listeners is that when you are motivated by passion and altruistic motivation, like, you don't have to chase the money. Like, therefore, I never thought I had this money idea. The median salary of a dietitian is $55,000 a year. So I didn't go into this career path because I was chasing a big salary. I chose nutrition because I love people, I love food, I love health, and I knew I wanted to work in a field where I can connect with people. And therefore, the fact that when I had this aha moment, though, about fiber, I think what excited me more than the opportunity to market this or to monetize it was, oh my gosh, there's a solution that can help people to lose weight and manage their weight without hunger. Now, just a few statistics. In this country right now, 70% of women are trying to lose weight.
What do you think about that statistic?
I think that it's very telling that right now this country is fighting an obesity epidemic, that people are really in search of a method, a way of eating, or a solution that can help them to look their best and feel their best. And I think of it as something really hopeful, because if you're trying to lose weight, and of course someone can dilute that to like this, to vanity, or it's just about aesthetics, but no, it's about wanting to feel your best. I celebrate that. I want you to be the best that you can be. But I am daunted by the statistic, because the fact that 70% of people feel they have to or likely have to really speaks to what I think of as a national health crisis. Currently, 70% of people in this country are overweight and 35% are obese. So if we think demographically that out of every 3 people, 2 are overweight, that means only 1 person out of 3 is at a healthy weight in this country. And that has not always been the case. So it is very concerning to me as a health expert to see people getting heavier and heavier and heavier despite all the resources available to us. And so many diets, I believe, are overly restrictive, extremely punitive. They are not lifestyle driven, and therefore anything you do temporarily leads to temporary results. I was so excited to stumble upon what I thought could be a solution that could help people to improve their health, which was the most important thing to me. There's so many diets out there, and what I find so concerning is if you're just focused on dieting and not on health, you're missing the point. It's yes, we all want to perhaps look a certain way, but if you don't feel a certain way in conjunction with that, health is paramount to me. That's the foundation of F Factor. My background was clinical. So to know that there's so many diets that can just produce weight loss but are not focused on improving your health, it's so short-sighted to me. So here I was prescribing this nutrient for health, and the byproduct was weight management. I think what made me feel so hopeful was, wow, maybe there's a solution here that can provide people an easy, delicious, effective way to lose weight and keep it off and change their life without compromising the quality of their life. And therefore, I think the message is when something excites you and, it fuels you, it fills your heart with joy, the money chases you because you talked about authenticity. People can see that. My clients have always known my motivation was to help them be everything that they could be, from a health perspective, from a joy perspective, a longevity perspective. And I think because my motivation was always so altruistic, that has been the success of my company. And that's, I think, where my reputation always sort of led the success that followed.
I have to say, back up really quick, I got rejected from NYU, and I'm very jealous that you went there. But I think I couldn't agree more with everything you're saying. And I mean, just for reference, I mean, you were, I think, Miss World or Miss USA is their lead dietitian. I think you were Megyn Kelly's lead dietitian, or she followed F Factor.
Yeah, no, she was.
So there's proof behind, I mean, this is an incredible thing. But what I hate, I think the word diet comes with such a negative connotation, right? And this is not a diet. I mean, this is a lifestyle experience. I mean, this is a whole thing that not only will impact hopefully your body and how you feel, but also like your mind and your wellness, right? So you're in college, you leave school, and then what happens? Did you already know you wanted to call it F Factor? Did you immediately open a practice?
So when I finished the University of Michigan. I went on to NYU. Then I went on to get my master's degree, and then I opened up a private practice. Coming out of my residency at New York University Hospital, I knew that I wanted to be in a clinical setting, and therefore I had reached out to cardiologists and endocrinologists and basically was asking them to refer patients to me. So I share this story for anyone who's starting out. I went into a medical field with no connections. I didn't have an uncle who was a doctor or a father was a doctor, a cousin was a doctor. I didn't have
a self-made girl.
I didn't have anyone in the medical world to throw me a bone. So I had to do it the old-fashioned way, which we now, think of as cold calling, to really date myself. I mean, I'm so embarrassed to say this is pre-internet.
I love cold calling now. Yeah. That is like my life.
I got the yellow pages, and I looked up endocrinologists and cardiologists in Manhattan. Okay. And I put together packages where I gave them my resume, and I wrote a cover letter. And I included a headshot. Why not? I laugh at that. I'm like, what was that about? And I'm like, I think I've just always been such a people person. And I think there was something about wanting them to know who I was, because I don't think I even had a website. So how would they know who this Tanya Zuckerbrot person is? But I put together this little press kit, and out of the 100 doctors, and something really important for anyone who's cold calling, it's not what they can do for you. Clearly, I needed them to refer patients to me because I didn't have any patients yet. But the way I positioned it was I thought about how I could help them. Like, let me help you. I can add a service to the wonderful care you're already providing. I can work as an extension of your team and provide dietary intervention to your patients for a more holistic approach. But it was viewed more as an extension of their office, of their medical team. So it was adding additional services sort of to this doctor's practice. Out of the 100 packages I sent to these doctors, guess how many doctors wrote me back?
Either 99 or 3. too. Okay. So it was
So they say that the return on cold calling is typically 1% to 2%.
Sure.
So great sense, like 100 packages went out, 2 doctors. But those 2 doctors, they are actually thanked in the forward of the F Factor diet book. And it's also such a lesson to take a chance on people. And these 2 doctors, each, separate private practices. One was a cardiologist, one was an endocrinologist. They said, okay, kid, we'll give you a shot.
Yeah.
They brought me in, they interviewed me, and I explained how dietary intervention could impact that clinical condition. And I was very respectful of the referral, meaning that once they referred the patient to me, I made sure to constantly be in contact with the doctor, keep them in the loop. And the doctors reported that these patients were seeing improvements. And therefore, they kept referring more and more patients to me. So that was really the beginning of this clinical private practice where I was becoming very well known for helping cardiovascular patients and diabetic patients improve their health through dietary intervention. And then what happened was a few months into these patients seeing improvements in their cholesterol and their sugars, the doctors would also weigh them. And that's when the weight loss became evident. And as I said, that came as a surprise to all of us because that wasn't the goal of this dietary intervention, but it was an unexpected but much welcome byproduct. So F Factor started to garner attention for a program that not only improved cholesterol, managed blood sugar levels, but could help people to lose weight without hunger. And my private practice is in Manhattan, and I'm very proud to say that, and humbled to say that I've worked with like really successful people, C-suite executives, people in the entertainment industry, and they work hard and they play hard. And that was something that I had given a lot of thought to, that in order for this to really work, people don't want to be sitting home with like a frozen diet dinner in order to improve their health or lose weight. They've worked really hard for the quality of life that they've created for themselves, and they don't want to forego that. And therefore, because I was always catering to this clientele that wanted to be at Nobu or travel to St. Bart's for Christmas and not have to give that up while still honoring their health and their waistline, that's where F Factor got this reputation of really understanding people's needs and wants for something that can add value to their life without compromising their lifestyle.
Oh, I have so many directions I could take this conversation. And I think it's also important to mention that, you started F Factor before social media was even a thing, right? So you were able to get in a niche of people before posting on Instagram and people could follow your clients and follow your life. So there was obviously traction from that clientele before you could see what someone is doing in a day, right? And I think that that's a really important part of this journey and this mission. So you got 98 no's, and then you get 2 yeses.
2 yeses.
And then the ball slowly starts rolling from there.
Yeah.
And then you open a practice. How far into this?
Well, I opened the practice from day one.
Okay.
I just didn't have clients.
Okay.
So I hung up a shingle, and that's where I reached out to these doctors saying, I'm ready to see clients. I have my degrees. I finished my residency. I would like to add this value to your private practice. And I would say after, these clinical patients were coming, the doctors started to refer more of their own patients to me. That's when these clinical patients were referring their friends and family and colleagues because the weight loss was so evident. And the way that they would describe the weight loss, it was really a byproduct of getting healthier. So for them, it was so sort of painless. It was it was so different from the punitive, restrictive experiences of the weight loss space, right? You're cutting out carbs, you're cutting out alcohol, you're not dining out, you're a slave to the gym. And F Factor doesn't ask you to do any of that. F Factor is based on 4 disruptive principles that, frankly, are counterintuitive to everything we've been told. You get to eat carbs from day one. You get to enjoy cocktails from day one. You get to dine out from day one. You get to work out smarter instead of harder. So these liberating principles, I think, really spoke to people. And I think that really was the spark of people realizing, wait, there's something out there that's allowing me to lose weight without hunger, and I'm still dining out, going for after-work drinks. I think that's why men loved F Factor so much, because it wasn't compromising their business dinners or after-work cocktails. And same with women. But I mentioned men because I think so many times diets can either skew for men or for women. You know, we think about Atkins as like meat and butter and like more, you know, more male-centric. Jenny Craig tends to have been, you know, more female-centric. And F Factor has always been gender neutral. You know, we could talk about branding a little bit at some point, but it's why I chose the color green, not pink or blue. It's like I wanted a color that would speak to both men and women because when it comes to health, I did not want to isolate one gender over another. Like, I care about all people, and I knew that F Factor could improve the health of both men and women. So I think, you know, people are always sort of fascinated to know that half my clients are men, especially, you know, if you're newer to the brand and you're following me on social media. I think often the way we present ourselves on social, we're going to attract, you know, one audience more than another. But in the private practice, you know, it was half the patients were men.
Growing up, was entrepreneurship something you thought, I want to grow up and work for myself? Because this is a hard fucking thing to do, right? Yeah. And you've done it on your own. So growing up, what was your thought process with that?
I will say you were born an entrepreneur.
You think so?
Yeah, you either are or you're not. And it's because to be an entrepreneur, you need an iron stomach. The highs are so high and the lows are so low. And I've had so many experiences that if I was not so determined to make something, to create something of value that I believed in, there's so many times I probably could have thrown in the towel. So when you speak about that entrepreneurial spirit, entrepreneurs, I think for the most part, have a passion for creating. And also, I think for making an impact. It's why, you know, you want to do something that's unique. It's why you don't want to go work for another company, because you want to have the bandwidth of being able to make decisions that you feel are driven by your conscience, by your creativity, by your passions, by your desires, by your philosophies. And you don't want to be constrained by someone else's. And therefore, I think the pros of being an entrepreneur is that you do give yourself the space to go after your dreams. But the risk, I think, is what most people don't realize, is something that isn't necessarily present when you're working for a company. You have stability and someone else is paying for the rent and for all your office supplies.
It's so different.
It's a completely different experience. And therefore, as an entrepreneur, you know, I was never on payroll. Like, I got paid if there was money left. When you work for a company, you're getting paid no matter what. And I think people sometimes think that the world of entrepreneurs is so glamorous and you can come and go, make your own hours, and you get to make all your decisions. But it also means that all the responsibility is yours. As an entrepreneur, you also are on 24/7. My mom said it best, like, F Factor is my firstborn child. And even if I go on vacation and say I go away with my husband and, you know, it's like a romantic getaway and we leave the kids at home, I still call home every day. So when it's your company, there is no vacation from your company. You think about it 24/7, it's a part of you. So it's a completely different animal, and not everyone's cut out for that or wants that. You know, there are dietitians who work for me, and they said, like, I would never want this. Like, I'm more happy to work for you, because as much as I can see the upside that it's your company and there's a lot of glory with that, there's also a lot of pain and concern and responsibility. To answer your question about did I always know, the answer is yes. My first business, I was 5 years old. And I went into my backyard and picked rocks. And then I put a table out in my front yard and I sold them. I know you're
like a classic, like, lemonade kid at the lemonade stand kind of story. Yeah.
And somehow I had kind enough neighbors that would come to my rock table and pick out a nice rock. And so that was my first business, was selling rocks. But even at such a young age, there was something about not just business, but the excitement I got to create something or to have something that someone else was interested, and then that would bring them joy. And then my next company was called Tanya's Boutique. I made beaded bracelets.
Wow.
I was in middle school, and I had this fisherman's tackle box filled with different color beads, and people could show me what beads they want. I take the order down, and so that was Tanya's Boutique. Then my next company was Tanya's Boutique, and I made bow barrettes, and I came up with this concept of having 3 ribbons on a barrette, and rather the most expensive part of a barrette is the metal hinge clasp. And the ribbon was actually quite inexpensive. And at the time, these bow barrettes were like very popular. But when I broke down the cost of goods, I was like, okay, so this is the most expensive part. What if I made 3 interchangeable bows and allowed people to buy 3 bows in one barrette instead of having to buy 3 full barrettes? So yes, it's like, even though there was always this creativity, I guess there was a little bit of some business acumen there just inherently. But what excited me the most was to make something that someone wanted, to see them then wear it or enjoy it. I think that's always what has been at the core of my motivation as an entrepreneur, is to leave the world a better place than I found it. I think it's why I've always had so much admiration for inventors, for architects, for artists. Like ashes to ashes, dust to dust, like their time on earth, like they left something of value. Like how cool that whoever, let's say Picasso, you go and you see like a painting like that exists for the rest of the world to enjoy forever. You go to Paris, you see the Eiffel Tower. I think about the person who created like the Post-it or like a zipper or a hanger. How incredible to create something that adds value to this world, brings joy to people's lives, makes people's lives easier, changes someone's life. And that is, I think, has been my motivation with my company, was how can I leave the world a better place than I found it in nutrition. And F Factor was the vehicle of impacting people's lives and helping them to feel better, look better, but do it in a way that was joyful.
I'm genuinely so glad you shared those stories about, your early days as a kid and having those ideas, because I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are like in their late teens, wanting to go to college, but also thinking, should I skip it because I have this idea? And I think if you were one of those kids, like you're saying, that it's the rocks or the bracelets, the wiring of entrepreneurs' brains, I'm convinced, is just different, right? Like someone may see the metal on that barrette and be like, oh, wow, it's weird that that's more. But you were like, it's more, but now I'm going to do this to make it more, right? And sell more. And I think that's fascinating. So were your parents, they were comfortable with entrepreneurship with you? Were they into this?
I think my parents saw that I had this natural inclination to wanting to connect with people, especially in the companies that I was creating. It really was about creating something and then having you respond to it and then me deliver it. So even look at the smile on my face as we're sharing this, like I'm picturing myself like showing you the beads that you could choose from, like, so choices, and then like delivering it to you and then seeing you, in, a month later in class and you're wearing it. Like that to me brought me so much joy. And therefore, I think my parents understood my heart, from my childhood, but I was also really academic. And therefore, I think my parents probably had enough faith in me to know that I could probably marry the two, because I did love school. So while I see a lot of great entrepreneurs on social media saying, like, if school's not for you, drop out, that was never going to be part of my story, because I actually love school. I'm a huge nerd. I love to learn. I'm the kid sitting in the front row, taking the most copious notes. I'm a student at heart. And I think it's one of the reasons I love nutrition so much, because in order to maintain my accreditation, I can't just rely on what I learned 25 years ago. I have to constantly take continuing education points. I'm constantly reading the journals and the studies and taking quizzes to earn my points. So it's why I think this career path also really spoke to me. So when I graduated and I went to private practice, my parents really saw me as a doctor. I mean, I had this really clinical education. I'd taken all these pre-med prereqs. I just graduated or finished my residency from the top hospital in the state of New York. I graduated from NYU valedictorian. Like I was really academic. So the entrepreneurial aspect, I think my parents recognized that it was supported by a really strong foundation of knowledge and education. And I bring that up now because when I think about my career, and I say this to anyone in your audience, to, yes, you can have a gimmick, you can find a money maker, you could have a great way of connecting with people. But what I always have underneath that, which is to me, where I've always, I think it's where like my confidence comes from when I speak, especially for the career path I chose, which was a clinical, path. It's science. And I'm so proud to say that my level of education for this space is pretty great.
Yeah.
And therefore, it was the education combined with the entrepreneurism that gave me this credibility. It's why I was able to cater to the who's who, because when you come into my office, you see it's like a whole wall of diplomas. And, I'm not resting on education to say like, oh, look how smart I am. But it does give credibility because, especially in a clinical setting, you want to know that this person is credentialed, that they did go to the top schools, because we're talking about health.
Yeah.
So I think my parents saw this determination in me to create something, but they also knew that I had put in the work through my education, and that the success of my work was really going to be due to the knowledge that I received through my education.
If your kids came to you and said, we want to be entrepreneurs, would you say yes?
I would.
You would? Okay.
Because it has been the most rewarding career path I could have chosen for myself.
Yeah.
I love my work. I feel so fortunate. I always say I feel so fortunate that I found a career that, sure, it's lucrative, but that I get to touch people's lives every day. And nothing would make me happier than for my children to find that passion.
Yeah.
But I would insist that they go to school and become educated in whatever topics would support that. I do wish that I had an MBA. I say that all the time.
Yeah.
If I could have gone for more school, I would have.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
And yes, there's a lot to say about learning from life and life's experiences, for sure, and I don't minimize that. I've learned a lot from just working and the mistakes I've made, and from being surrounded by really bright people and learning from their shared experiences. But I think getting that foundation of school, if you're learning about something that is applicable, if you're going to go to something completely disparate, I'm not saying waste your time on courses that you're never going to use, but I feel that now colleges have so many courses that you can design a curriculum that is going to support your interests, and therefore you will earn people's respect when you know that you have like that formal education.
I did not go to college, but not because I didn't want to, because I literally could not get in. I was like a classic high school dropout, and it was not good because I love to learn like life things, and I've done well on that. However, I'm a big advocate for people going to school, because I think that, book smart or not book smart, it's a place where you go to, not only learn about yourself, but like the people skills. And I think that's something that's really cool about F Factor. And I would love to kind of segue that into the branding side of it, is because, it's this fabulous brand. You're right, the color scheme, even the cover of your book and the way that you showcase things in your office is perfectly branded, but incredibly authentic. And I think that's very threatening to people, because you've got someone who's beautiful, but also so smart, right?
Thank you.
And that's not common.
Before we jump to that, because I would hate for this to have been misinterpreted. When I talk about an education, I am not necessarily talking about a college degree, nor am I talking about a master's degree. I'm talking about an education, meaning that there is so much information available. There are courses available. There's continuing education. So if you are going to be an entrepreneur, I would encourage you to take some courses that are going to provide you with more information than you have, so that, yes, as you're learning along the way, you are actually able to, I think, fast track your success, because you've been provided with some tools or some knowledge that can support making better choices than others, rather than just blindly doing things because like your intuition says to do it, which is what a lot of entrepreneurs do. And therefore, as an entrepreneur, one of the things I always say, it's like, look, I don't have an MBA. So even though I'm a dietitian and I built this multi-million-dollar company, I could have had success. I could have gone to success probably a lot sooner if I had more formal education in business.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that's what I'm explaining, that I I think that there's so much knowledge available to us. So yes, passion is so important for being the impetus for like going for something. I would encourage anyone to, it's like if I was going to open up a flower shop, I'd take some flower courses first. I wouldn't just raise capital and then just like get a store and get some flowers and sort of like wing it. I would want to learn some skills. I'd want to, you know, learn how to manage the books. So I want my message to be understood that this is not coming from some elitist, you know, perspective that, you know, only success comes with a formal education. Not at all.
No.
I just encourage people to learn and do their research, and therefore they just, I think, will have a greater chance for success.
Sure.
But when it comes to health and wellness, I do talk about my credentials a lot because of what's happened on social media, meaning that there are so many, the space of wellness has become really saturated, overly saturated, with a lot of self-proclaimed experts. There's excitement to that nutrition has become so important, that so many people are talking about it, and I think that's great that people are valuing the information that's out there. But unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there because a lot of times people who are doing the loudest talking are the least qualified. And therefore, one of the things I tell my followers on social, whether it's me or anyone else, I'm like, I think it's really important to be educated rather than to be informed. So when it comes to your health, look into someone's credentials. Make sure that they are credentialed in the field that they're advising on, especially when it comes to health.
And I will say that I think it's really important because, you know, the trendiness of dietitians and that anyone can post something on social media and say they're whatever, but they're not. It's very similar with like coaches and mentorship. And I find all these coaches are like Ponzi schemes in my opinion. But what I find so fascinating about it is, you know, that's where college really is so important. And I think a lot of young aspiring entrepreneurs, especially with how easy it is to become like famous and rich overnight on social media, they aren't doing like what you and I have done, which is become an expert in that field. You have become an expert in the field of fitness. It is way different than like going and saying, oh, I got one coaching client, now I'm a coach and can tell you how to have this amazing life, but you don't have the experience. So you need that experience to build something like what you have with F Factor. So with the branding part of it, did you do that on your own? Did you hire people to help with that?
I did. And I think that is probably what really speaks to an entrepreneur at heart, is that your company is often such an extension of you, your desires. In my mind, I needed to fill a void in the marketplace. F Factor certainly is not the first weight loss program to exist. There's Weight Watchers, there's Jenny Craig, there's Atkins, there's keto, there's paleo. I mean, it's a very crowded space. The marketing really was a byproduct of creating something that I knew authentically could resonate with people. And that was based on the fact that I had this private practice. And what I mean by that is by interfacing with clients every day, in many ways, I was really able to understand directly from my clients what was missing in the market or what they needed. And what I found was when people thought about dieting, it was something that felt really unsexy, something you really weren't proud to be doing. Because by admitting you're on a diet, you're basically admitting that you're not satisfied. You're not satisfied with, you know, something about yourself. And most of the diets that, you know, that we had been exposed to were really restrictive. You know, you were always cutting out something. And when I thought about the branding of the company, the color, as I said, was because I wanted something that was gender neutral, and that's where the green came from. But the messaging was really based on the feedback from my clients. You know, as I said, I was in Manhattan working with this who's demographic. People worked hard, play hard. These people were fashionable. They were very bright. And therefore, how could I speak to them in a way that kept them engaged? And what was it that they really wanted to hear? And that's where F Factor became this challenger brand in a space that in many ways had become very sort of antiquated. And I have great reverence for the big, players out there in my space. But nobody was speaking to people like in an urban footprint, girls who were very fashionable, and people that, as I said, wanted to dine out all the time. If you went to another diet's, like, let's say, meeting, they're not discussing like what to eat at Nobu, or at Cipriani. And here was this practice in Manhattan with this clientele, and that was the information that they needed. So by tapping into sort of the psychology of what is it that people really want and servicing that, that's really where the marketing messaging came from. And it's why it was so authentic, because it really was about fulfilling the needs of my clients, what they wanted to hear, but supporting that with practical solutions. And I think that's why F Factor became so popular, because it became really this word of mouth lifestyle for people. And who would ever think that people would walk around wearing fiber sweatshirts, wearing F Factor sweatshirts? I say, like, who's probably going to walk into Equinox wearing like some diet plastered on them? But F Factor for people really, I think, ultimately became so much bigger than weight loss, because the F over time came to stand for so much more than just fiber. And I think that was social media that allowed me to showcase my life and show how I was living the F Factor way, but that included other F words like family meals or going out with friends or having fun, what I did in my free time, the travels. I talked a lot about faith. So ultimately, my message for my followers was F Factor, yes, of course you're going to lose weight without hunger. Of course you're going to improve your health. But it really is about motivating you to be the best version of yourself and have the best life by your own design. Because when I say, like, live your best life, you're like, well, what does that mean? And my response is, well, I can't answer that for you, because our values may be different. Like, tell me what your best life looks like. And then when you would share that with me, my job as the dietitian, or as sort of like your health coach, wellness coach, friend, confidant, I wear many different hats for my patients, but ultimately my patients realize that my interest in working with them is to help them, like, be the best version of themselves and fulfill all their dreams, and to realize that there are no limitations.
It's the coolest thing, because I'm sitting in the smallest town in Mansfield, Connecticut, when I go home making waffles for my 75-year-old mother that doesn't know anything about the world of social media. But, like, you created a recipe that I can now bond with my very normal mom over. And it's more than just that word diet. It's more than just the lifestyle. It's simply a product to help people feel and live their best lives. And I really appreciate that you said that, because that's so rare, and you see so much just fake stuff on social media, and you were just living proof that, you really can build a business and have it all and have that clientele, but you did it in a diligent and smart way. And that is how you become a good businesswoman. Okay. Tanya, what is your piece of advice for young adults who not only want to live the beautiful life that you lead, but also have the career that you've managed to build?
I feel that's been a theme throughout this conversation, but we keep coming back to authenticity. And if there's one thing that I recognize that I've done, is I've been authentic to myself, but really consistent with my messaging. Even when my message was unpopular. And what do I mean by that? Is that it's easy to jump on trends and think, I'm going to monetize this is what's popular, but understand that fads come and go. So your career is going to be short-lived. When I discovered fiber, I didn't discover fiber, it existed, but when I stumbled upon it and discovered fiber's ability to help people lose weight without hunger, it was at a time where low-carb eating was really the trend. And I was introducing a way of eating that was high-carb. It was high fiber, but fiber is only found in carbs. But it was my conviction and my understanding of the mechanism that it allowed me to stick with something despite the fact it wasn't popular and sort of go against the grain. And I've seen many people in my space pivot from decade to decade, following whatever the trend is and speaking to that, because look, nutrition is a young science. We're allowed to ebb and flow. But I have stayed on one point. And look, it is fair to say, like, you can add things to it, but I've been really consistent with my messaging. I've never wavered. If anything, I found over time that the more research I've done, the more it's supported like this initial belief that I had. And then I think when I talk about the authenticity with the consistency, no one loves that factor more than me. I am the brand. I live the brand. And I think that's where social media in many ways was such a gift, because I was able to authentically showcase how I was living this way so joyfully. And I think it let people be like, wow, well, you know, look at her. She's traveling, she's dining out, she's eating all these delicious foods. It was so inspirational, but it was done in a way that I was really speaking from a place of not just the business person, but the consumer. So if you are going to do your own thing, create your own product, you need to believe in it more than anyone. That's, you know, I think the most important message. And that's why for entrepreneurs, it's sort of hard to talk someone out of it if they really have that strong entrepreneur gene. And if you can talk them out of it, then they're not really an entrepreneur.
You're right. You have to truly be fearless.
Fearless.
And you are living proof of that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Tanya, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your Saturday to be on this show and inspire so many people. Well, where can everyone find more out about F Factor and you?
Well, thank you. I'm glad that we were able to connect and make this time. You can follow me on social media. We have 2 handles. There's the company's, which is at F Factor, F_Factor, and then my handle, which is at Tanya Zuckerbrot. There's a website, ffactor.com, and then you can learn more about the program and the products there. And of course, the products are available on Amazon.